Well, a little bit more than less than 2 weeks to go before the primary gets here. We're talking to our various Republican and Democrat Libertarian friends. So join us now via Zoom is my good friend Mario Massillamany. We've known this guy for 20 years. We knew each other. We both had more hair and less stomach, if my memory serves me correct, old friend.
That's correct. That's correct. I had a lot more hair, and could fit in a shorter, smaller suit.
No worries. So let's start. Hamilton County, obviously, ground zero in Republican politics still these days. How are things looking up north?
We have a lot of highly contested races. We have four open judge races with some highly qualified candidates. We have a very contested sheriff's race, two wonderful candidates running for sheriff. And then we have a couple Senate seats that are pretty contentious, but I think show a contrast between the candidates as who are running for those offices.
Now, how do you define a Republican in Hamilton County? Is a Republican versus Republican light? Republican Mitch Daniels versus Republican Mike Braun, Republican establishment versus Republican outsider. I always tell people Republicans comes in all shapes and colors and hues.
Look, as the Hamilton County Republican chairman, I believe that we are a big tent party. We believe in limited government, fiscal responsibility. Those are two of the main tenets within the Republican Party here in Hamilton County. And, there are some people that defer on, 1% of the issues, but we believe that everyone should be a Republican if they believe in limited government and fiscal responsibility. So I don't believe it's Republican light. It really depends on some of these races, how we want Hamilton County to move forward, right? We're the fastest growing county in the state of Indiana for the last 20 years. We're the second largest county in the state of Indiana. And so, we have a lot of different things that we are looking to do in the next couple of years. And I think that, how we look to deal with our judiciary and how we look to deal with law enforcement are critical issues in Hamilton County that voters are facing now.
Well, let's start, my friend, with the top of the ticket, which would be technically, we'll get to statewide races in just a bit, but the race for Congress and the 5th Congressional District, Victoria Sparks, the incumbent, I want to say Chuck Goodridge is challenging her this go around.
No, Chuck is not challenging her this go around. There are a couple smaller tier candidates, but Chuck decided not to run against her this time. And Victoria, for the most part, I think is going to win this primary pretty handedly. I think that she's going to be geared up to take on J.D. Ford and beat him this November. Now, I do know that J.D. Ford is working diligently to try and make headways in Hamilton County, but I think Victoria is one of those interesting candidates that she appeals to people you don't think she would appeal to because she's so non-traditional candidate that she gets some people like some of these Carmel housewives that support her that you would not think would normally traditionally support a candidate like Victoria Sparks. So I think that she's going to be in great shape this municipal cycle. I mean, this primary cycle for sure, but I think that she's going to win in November also.
That brings me to the interesting question. Obviously, the demographics of Hamilton County are changing. They're no longer the dark red. I say probably medium red, light red, maybe purple. I was going to say to a friend that sort of Route 32 is that sort of dividing line between more Democratic, more progressive leaning, more blue than more red at the top. Are you seeing that in Hamilton County as well, or is it just sort of we are where you are, whether it's Fishers, Carmel, etc.?
It's funny. A lot of our Democrat friends that used to be highly active in Marion County have moved up to Fishers and Carmel. Why? Because Marion County has failed them. And unfortunately, they're bringing their Democrat politics to Hamilton County, to Fishers and Carmel area. So, that's one of the things that we struggle with is, Democrats are fleeing Marion County. They're fleeing Chicago, and they're coming down to Hamilton County because of the great school systems, the safety in the community, and the wonderful houses that you can afford to buy in Hamilton County. The problem is a lot of these Democrats that are fleeing failed blue states and blue cities are bringing their liberal politics with them. And what's insanity? Doing the same thing, expecting a different result. So that's the biggest thing that we have to try and explain to these people. Why did you leave Indianapolis? Because they're full of potholes, full of crime. The school systems are failing, but yet you're bringing the same types of philosophies and policies to Hamilton County. In an area where that conservative leadership and conservative values have made it the fastest growing county in the state of Indiana for over 20 years.
Our guest on the program today is our good friend Mario Massillamany, Hamilton County GOP chairman. Talk about the upcoming primary race. Mario, we look at the primary and just sort of the so many challenges that people actually have, particularly on the Senate side of things. Anywhere you're concerned that could maybe sort of come back to maybe sort of hurt Republicans in the general election?
Jim Buck is in a race against Tracy Powell. Trump and, some people from D.C. are supporting Tracy Powell, especially since he did, because Jim Buck voted against redistricting. But I don't think that will be the central issue. Jim Buck has been in office for over 30 years. He had announced that he was retiring and then had a change of heart. And I know a lot of people believed that Jim Buck was going to retire and had given their support to Tracy Powell. So you're seeing some of that play in with the fact that they're wanting a change after over 30 years in office. They'd like some different leadership.
So you're saying at the very least, unlike maybe some other folks who voted against redistricting, that is the issue with Jim Buck, almost kind of like Greg Walker down in Johnson County. There are sort of different issues out there that don't necessarily tied to redistricting. Redistricting is a factor, but not the factor.
I don't think redistricting is the factor in this race. I think that the length of time that the incumbent has been in office, he's been in office since I was in grade school. And I think a lot of people that I've heard are wanting a change. Tracy Powell appears to be that change. But there are a lot of older people that have known Jim Buck and his family for a long period of time that are supporting him. So I think this is going to be an interesting race. But I think that if Jim Buck loses this race, this is not about redistricting. I think it will have to do with the fact that he's been in office for a long period of time and people want something different.
Any other? What is some of the other open contested? Really hot seats right now in the primary up in Hamilton County.
So another big race is Senator Kyle Walker, a friend of both of ours. We've known him for a long period of time. I've known Senator Walker for close to 30 years, to be honest with you, since our high school days when we were both involved in politics. He's retiring. There's a number of candidates running to replace him in the primary. Juanita Albright, who is the president of the HSE school board. You have Tiffany Divelson, who is on the Fishers City Council, the first African-American woman elected into office in Fishers. She's also a veteran. And then you have two other individuals, Travis Hankins and the other lady is from the Lawrence area, which is a smaller area. Jack Kiefer's famous high school basketball coach, his wife, is also running for this seat. Right now, it appears that it is head-on race between Juanita Albright and Tiffany Divelson. They appear to have the most yard signs. They appear to have the most money and the most local support. The Fishers mayor, Scott Fadness, is supporting Tiffany Divelson. A lot of the traditional groups like the pro-life and the NRA are supporting Juanita Albright. So that should be an interesting race. I'm curious to see who wins that race because it appears to be neck and neck between Juanita Albright and Tiffany Divelson.
Mario Massillamany, our guest on the program today. Mario, a longtime friend, we've known each other forever, is also chairman of the Hamilton County Republican Party. So we're talking to Mario today about the upcoming primary and what it means for the general election as well. Let me ask you, obviously, there's been, like I said, some contention over the whole redistricting matter. You've had the governor speak out and sort of maybe encourage some of the super PACs that have run some of these ads. Also got Lieutenant Governor Todd Rokita, the whole 9 yards. Does this really help the party at the end of the day? That you got the Republican governor, Republican lieutenant governor, Republican secretary of state sort of going against some of these incumbents?
So we're spending millions of dollars fighting each other in a primary. And I think the Democrats are excited about this because they're collecting money and they're waiting to take on a wounded, Republican in the general election. I don't think it's smart. One of the things that I'm going to look at this November is how much impact the loss of money, making the incumbents spend money and the primary challengers spend money also that could have been used in the general election to make sure that we win the Secretary of State's office and hold on to supermajorities in both the House and the Senate. The governor and the attorney general and Jim Banks, our U.S. senator, are endorsing a lot of these primary opponents. They're taking on incumbents. They're putting their name out there and they're putting their neck out there. If they don't win, there's about 8 races that are up that are contested right now in the Senate. If they don't win 4 or 5 of these races, what does that show their influence and how their endorsement, their support, and their money? What does that mean? If the Senate still holds on to 5 or 6 of those seats, what that shows is the governor and the attorney general don't have a lot of influence. Now, there's a lot of time between now and the primary. But if the governor and the attorney general are able to take 4 or 5 of these seats and beat these incumbents, they'll have a lot of power and influence to sway, and they can talk to people and say, hey, look, our influence, our money made a huge difference. But if they don't win 5 or 6 of these races, I think that it's a bad look for the attorney general and the governor.
Let me ask you this, old friend, because you understand this as well as anybody else, that you know as well as I do that money can't buy love. Just like the old Beatles song goes, you can spend as much money as you want. But I remind people, back in 2007, a guy named Greg Ballard, a former Marine who nobody knew, had $50,000 in the bank, 2 campaign workers, who went on to beat Bart Peterson. So money isn't necessarily an indication.
I worked on that race, Abdul. My job was to help run the grassroots for the city county council candidates and also for Greg Ballard. Most people don't remember that, but no one gave us a chance of winning that seat. And even on election day, we were a little surprised, but it's because of the arrogance of Bart Peterson and his team.
Now, let me ask you, because what it goes to, my friend, is ground game. It goes to ground game and relationships. You know as well as I do, you can spend all the money in the world, but I'll argue an endorsement will. You're more likely to vote for somebody because your next door neighbor said, yeah, I think he or she is a good guy, as opposed to some DC type male. So I suppose my question is, have the Braun, Beckwith, Banks people, do you think they understand that they get that these are relationships, that if you're a state senator for 10 years or state rep for a number of years, you built up relationships. You've gone to church with these people. Your kids have gone to school together. They shop at the grocery store. Go to Little League baseball games or Rotary.
You go to the Rotary Club meetings. You go to a lot of the local organization and events, and you go to like the chili suppers. You go to the VA, like the veterans groups, American Legion, and hang out with those guys. You can spend a lot of money. You can get endorsements from U.S. senators, the governor, the attorney general. But, as I've always told people, and a prime example is my law partner, Chris Jeter, who's a state rep. His opponent, Leah McGrath, had every elected official endorse her, including the governor, Susan Brooks, who was the congresswoman, the mayors. Chris Jeter had no endorsements, but he destroyed her because he knocked on doors and he was known in the community. And I think that is going to matter. And these elected officials, these state senators who have kept up their relationships in the community, I think it's going to come and be very fruitful for them in this primary election. The ones that have not, the ones that have kind of sat on the fact of that they're an incumbent and haven't kept up their relationships, I think are going to be in trouble. You look at some of these senators that have not raised any money in the last 4 years, that have not had fundraisers, have not been going to community events. They are in trouble. And I think that the governor and the attorney general will be able to pick them off. But that's going to be, I think, a few of these state senators. I don't think that's going to be a majority of them. And, if no one listens to me, but if the governor and the attorney general and Senator Jim Banks had asked me what my opinion is, keep your powder dry. Don't get involved in some of these races, because when you do, and if you lose, it makes you look bad and it lowers your title. It lowers the influence and the power of your office.
Mario Massillamany with us for a few more minutes on the program today. Mario is the chairman of the Hamilton County Republican Party. With the primary just a couple weeks away, we figured it'd be a good time to chat. Mario, early voting, how's it looking up there?
Early voting is slow, as normal as you could expect. You have more Democrats than Republicans, but Republicans show up on election day. We do an aggressive early voting, push as the Hamilton County Republican Party, but we do that in November. We don't do that in the primary. And so you're going to see a larger turnout of Democrats show up in Hamilton County right now. but those numbers will slowly decrease as we get closer to election day for the primary.
My friend, this is one of those odd election years. It happens about every 20 years. There's no governor's race, no U.S. Senate race, no presidential race. So the top of the race is the top of the ticket is obviously the Secretary of State's race. It happened back in 2006. It's happening now in 2026. On the Democratic side, you got Bo Bai, Blythe Potter. On the Republican side, you got Diego Morales and Dave Shelton. Any predictions or handicap in either one of those right now, or?
I think Diego Morales is going to win by 85% in his convention. I wouldn't be shocked if he gotten closer to 90%, but he's going to have between 80 to 85% of all the delegates in the Republican convention vote for him as our nominee for 2026. I am hearing from my sources, some good friends that are Democrats, that say Bo Bai is in a hotly contested convention battle against Blythe. She's got the money to run a convention battle. She's got the experience. She's a military veteran. And, Democrats don't like being told what to do, and they don't like this hierarchy of, a coronation, like a Bo Bai who comes into Indiana because he's got a family legacy that he's going to be given that nomination. I think that he is going to be in a contested battle. That is one of the reasons you can see he was attacking Diego Morales until Blythe got enough money to truly run a convention race. As you know, these convention races, you only need about 100 to 200,000 to be able to run. And she has that. And she has some support coming her way. And if that's why you don't see Bo Bai attacking Diego Morales right now, because he is in a dogfight. And I wouldn't be shocked if he barely pulls it off or if Blythe actually wins the convention. It's a long shot, but I do think that she has a chance because she resonates with Democrat convention delegates. They don't want, again, to have some big name, Bai family telling them what to do. And a lot of his money is coming in from outside sources, from outside Indiana, and Democrats don't like that.
Final question for you, friend. So over the next couple of weeks, what will you be looking for? What will you be paying attention to in this primary season?
I think one of the biggest things that we'll be looking for is to see who has the best ground game, who has the best GOTV, get out the vote plan for the Tuesday of the primary. So, who's able to man all the polling sites, who's able to make sure that they're doing phone banks and door knocking and able to get their message out. Because if you're running on just straight redistricting, especially for the state Senate seats, that's not going to be enough. A lot of people truly believe that you need to give them something more as to why you want to go to the General Assembly. For some of these, judicial officers that are running for both the, judges in Hamilton County and also the sheriff's race, like, how do you distinguish yourself from your opponent? And that, I think, is going to be the key. That's going to be the critical thing. And also name ID. Most of these races with the large amount of voters in Hamilton County, the only way you're going to be able to get out there is if you can somehow catch fire. And so what is your philosophy? What is your policies, and why are you running? And can that resonate with voters?
All right. Well, our guest in the front has been our good friend Mario Massillamany, chairman of the Hamilton County Republican Party, longtime friend. We knew each other back in the old days. Look, hey, we're the old guys now. Congratulations.
When you first moved to Indiana, Abdul.
Exactly.
Just to get cigars together.
Yeah, exactly. We have to do it again
real soon.
Yeah. Hey, Mario, thanks a lot for talking, buddy. I do appreciate it.
See you, Abdul. Have a good day.